I'm sorry, I really like this part. If I'm filming in the car, does this make me an official YouTuber? Alright, hello and welcome back. None of my plans for vlogging this week panned out the way that I wanted them to, so here we are in, not my car, it's actually a family car. Anywho, I'm here and I'm talking about Ash Knight's book Stay. I really enjoy the book, but right away I'm going to say that there are some potential reasons why it might not be the best book for you. One, if you're really sensitive to swearing. It's not like they're dropping F-bombs like multiple times a page, every page, but there is a decent amount of swearing because it's a very emotional book. Two, if you have a trigger warning with like sexual, physical, or mental abuse, parts of this book will probably be triggering for you. And then also, if you don't feel very comfortable with sex scenes, it's not until like the last probably about 4 or 5 chapters, but there are definitely some sex scenes and some of them do get pretty descriptive. So if for any reason those 3 are sensitive topics for you, or if for some reason you just really don't like romance, maybe pass on this book, but otherwise keep watching, keep reading my blog companion, and let me tell you about why I really like this book. So it takes place approximately now, just based off the context clues of like them talking about technology and stuff. Like they mentioned sitting down to watch Netflix and watching Friends, which I thought was really funny and kind of like very relatable. But it follows the story of 2 men. So there's Joe, who's 22, and there's Madden, who's 27. Madden is a nurse, he's established, he's got a really great family, and honestly, like the worst thing that has ever happened to him was losing his parents when he was fairly young. Joe, on the other hand, poor Joe. Joe honestly breaks my heart because his dad is just a terrible person, and his friends were even worse to Joe. And so Joe, I really don't like defining people by what has happened to them because I don't think that that's fair, because I think that there's always room for growth. But like Joe, and growth does happen throughout the book, but Joe starts off as a very broken, very defeated individual. And it doesn't help that he is on the spectrum, so he has that like biological aspect working against him, and then he has the environmental aspects of his father being abusive, his mother dying when he was little, and she was also, it sounds like she was probably OCD, and then his father's friends being abusive to him. So he's just got a lot going against him. And I don't mean to laugh out of like mocking him. It's just kind of one of those things where it's just like unbelievable how many cards are stacked against him. And so I think that's one reason why I did have a little bit of trouble reading the book, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with talking to individuals who are on the spectrum. I have even less experience with talking with people who experienced any form of abuse. And so it was sometimes hard for me to truly understand and grasp just how hard Joe had it. And so it was really important for me, as someone who does come from a place of privilege, who has had a life pretty comparable to Madden's. I mean, I still have my parents, but I have experienced a pretty serious loss like he did, to just really understand where Joe's coming from and why he has so much trouble trusting people, and why he has so much trouble interacting with people or letting them touch him, whether it's just to shake his hand or like to give him a reassuring like, hey, it's okay, you got this, kind of like personal touch. And so honestly, that's one reason why I just love the dynamic between him and Madden, because I wish that I could be as mindful and considerate and thoughtful like Madden is. I think he's a really well-written character, and I think because Joe's situation is very realistic. I think Madden's response is also pretty realistic, and I just really appreciate that fact. So I loved the characters. I loved their interactions. I also think that the plot was really good. I mentioned growth with Joe, and I mean that's not like the whole plot. Like the plot is definitely Joe and Madden finding each other, developing a relationship, and a lot of it too is also just Joe growing up, and also to some degree Madden growing up. He doesn't have as much like internal work to do, just because he's already got like a pretty solid grounding, I think. But like I think they really help make each other be better characters, and they really the fact that they're so real and the fact that they work together so well just really make the plot that much more engaging and emotional. And I think that's some of why too I really enjoyed it, because it was so emotional. Like you see Joe turn from this scared, independent person, and only independent because he has to be, because he's one of those people that thinks that he has to be alone, that he's just like been dealt that hand in life, and see him realize that like he can depend on people, he can have connections, he can hold on to things. And with Madden just like realizing that like he's not cursed in love, that he can recover after being cheated on, and that he can help provide for someone, was just like a really beautiful character development. I think the supporting characters are great. I think learning more about Joe's past made the events throughout the book more believable, more understandable, and just overall it just really tied everything together really well. And I absolutely love the ending, but I don't want to spoil it to you. But it's just kind of one of those things where, as realistic as this story is throughout essentially the entire book, the ending is a little bit of that like romantic comedy, romantic drama, like ooh, that would never happen in real life type of thing, because of the way that like, if you believe in destiny, I guess it's realistic. If you're skeptical of destiny, it probably wouldn't strike you as very realistic. But regardless of where you stand on that, the ending is just really beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. I think that Knight is a very descriptive writer, which, kind of getting back to my like trigger warnings earlier, if you are uncomfortable with sex scenes, her descriptions might make you that much more, like slightly more uncomfortable. But if you aren't uncomfortable with sex scenes, it might make those scenes that much more enjoyable. And I just overall, it was just a very solid book. So that's all I have for Stay. Really enjoy it, definitely recommend. Like I said, if you do have those few trigger warnings, you might want to not avoid it, but like just be mindful going in. And I think on the note of mindfulness, I think this is a really good book that, especially if you haven't dealt, like me, if you haven't really interacted with people who are on the spectrum or who have had trauma, I think it really gives a good insight into the fact that there's pain in the world, and that there's pain that you as a person of privilege, just you in general, may or may not really understand. And I think it'll really open your eyes and open your heart. So thank you so much for that long-winded accolade of Stay. And next week I'm really excited to share with you Danielle Holian's book, The Dilemma. Thanks.